Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This week on Heart and Hand, well, fuck. So welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar. I am your host as always. And joining me this week is the master of mellifluous melody, Martyn Ramsey.
How are we, David?
I've been better.
As usual, I'm wheeled out to
yes. I got you on after
rage.
I got you on after the title win.
You did.
That will sustain you through this. Not great. It's a compliment. The reason that I get you on during this is because I think that you retain.
I'm not super scoreboard, you mean?
Yeah, you retain some measurement, and I think we've seen some wild opinions just in our circle, as well as social media, and we will try and balance it. But the overriding feeling last night and today, as we record this, is just anger, annoyance, upset, and we'll talk about where we balance this in context and whatnot, but I'll be in the cold goal ground when Rangers going out of a cup, especially at Ibrox, and especially to a team, X amount of points below us, doesn't send me into a rage.
Especially when we are not exactly swimming in trophies and recent memories of success. I get we all have priorities. One trophy does not equal the other. We know what was important this season and what is important every season, which is to be champions of Scotland. Then there is some kind of European ambition and continued consistent performance and respect. And maybe one day we'll get to see Rangers lift something there. And then it's the Scottish Cup, and then it's the League Cup. And I know there's a distance between those, but they still count. And when you're a club that shows itself to the world, defines itself by just collecting up silverware, I never really understand the total shrug, especially in the era in which we're living. Didn't happen often, obviously in the 90s, especially in finals, but you could say, well, can't win them all, and we've seen 20 odd trophies in 11 years or whatever it was. But where are all these cups that we're so just bloated and blasé about? And I also get the argument. You go back to 2008. Did the Queen of the South final make up for missing out winning the league and missing out Manchester? Of course, it did not. Cups are never a replacement, or an ideal replacement, or an adequate replacement for a league title. But joining them up is special. Winning the double is special. And just racking up the numbers again, especially when you're Rangers, as I said, who we literally define ourselves by this and nothing else. We win things. So yeah, really, we'll go over it. Don't worry, by the 15th, and we're lifting the most important trophy up again, we won't still be sitting gunning about it, but it's very, very frustrating, and the manner of it was clown car stuff again.
Yes, that's, I think, a big thing that we'll talk about today. But yeah, look, see, unless you are, as in most arguments, on the extreme of either wing, which is, on the one hand, look, it doesn't matter, or on the other, sack Gerrard, this is appalling, then if you're at any space in between those, then I think that you are right. It's fine to be disappointed, it's fine to be angry, it's fine to be hurt, it's fine to be saying, okay, but I'll try and place this in context, and overall it's not a disaster or anything. All of those positions are absolutely fine, and they can coexist with each other. I know our society these days, old man yells at cloud, means that you've got to take a position and then you've got to die on the hill that you've chosen, but I don't think real life works like that. So I think if you're at any point in between those two, they're perfectly valid viewpoints to hold. It's just a personality thing, however you go about your business. What I will say, though, is you're absolutely correct in your assessment of what it means up against what we've already achieved this year. Had Steven Gerrard won both cups this year and Celtic were currently booking an open-top bus for their 10 in a row celebration, then there would have been a serious conversation still to be had in the summer about Steven Gerrard's future. And if Rangers were to win the league and no cups next year, there still wouldn't be if they were to do well in Europe. Europe is a bit of an odd one because us as a support, I think there's an element of paying lip service to it. I think deep down we would all rather win the Scottish Cup and League Cup than do well in Europe. I believe that. I think we all know logically that Europe is a place to be. But I think deep down there's a primal thing about winning silverware because of the reasons you touched on. But the reality is that we are not winning leagues if we are not doing well in Europe because the financial aspect of it is just so much. And we've got also important and so much of our income that if Steven Gerrard had won 3 League Cups, he won his third one this year, or a League Cup, and a Scottish Cup this year, and had gone out in the qualifying rounds in Europe every year, we wouldn't be the league champions. That's a fact because we would not have been able to build this team.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I'd slightly disagree, and I think there's maybe a newer generation maybe who do see Europe in a different light, certainly to what we grew up seeing, and in terms of its importance, the link is so obvious.
I think they see it. I think we all see it, and we all get it. I'm talking about emotionally, though. Credit is not given for European success the way that it is. Well, put it like this: the European success this season has not been taken in, I think, at all into consideration when people are talking about the cup defeats.
A lot of that's reactionary. I can only speak for myself, and you're probably right, but I do think Europe's important, hugely, not just financially. I think for just we're talking about status here, aren't we? We go back to my point earlier about how we sell ourselves to the world. It is important that we are still in that conversation and continuing to progress in that kind of linear fashion that we have under Gerrard. So I would, league's always number one. Then I want to see something in Europe, and the 2 cups are further down, but they're not miles away. I still think they're important. They do not, and they would not make up for another title this season. They're just good and important companion pieces to that. We do love our doubles and trebles, obviously. So basically, we're sitting here, David. There's no excuse for Rangers being out the Scottish Cup, and if you've won loads in the last 10 years, you can maybe kind of shrug it off. But I don't think Rangers fans ever really shrug off about a cup. But it's just it's the manner, it's the nature, and perhaps we're all guilty, fans, players alike, of just assuming after a couple of weeks ago that we'd go on and do this. But our cup record really shouldn't have given that ultra confidence, I don't suppose.
I said on here a couple of weeks ago that I was more worried about St Johnstone than I was about Celtic. And unfortunately, I was proved right because I knew they would raise their game to play Celtic. Or not raise their game, I just knew that they would be utterly focused and on it, and they were. There's no doubt overall, since we won the title, we've dropped off a level. And I think that it's unfair when people say things, they're just not trying anymore. Of course they're trying. That's ridiculous. You think they want to be taking all this criticism? It's silly, right? But consciously or unconsciously, they, I think, had set themselves a target. They'd placed a flag and say, right, we need to reach that. And they reached it, and they had their head down and just ran for it and didn't stop, and they were relentless, and they got there. And then, maybe it's human nature, I don't know, there has been a drop-off. There's no getting away from it. Maybe it's the wee knock you're ignoring, the extra 5% you just find goes because the necessity to do it isn't quite as strong as it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I'm not a professional athlete. We've seen it before. I mean, we've seen it from better Rangers teams than this. But even so, there has been a drop-off. They've got by. It hasn't been terrible. There was, obviously lost at home to Racist FC, which was a hurtful one. But that game, I think, could have gone either way, even on the night. But we've got through, the draw at Parkhead, beating Hibs. We've been okay. But I think that last night was just a really tired, fitful performance from Rangers. I would say mentally more than anything, because again, physically they are professional athletes and they can go out and play for 90 minutes. It's not that, but I didn't think that it was a case of that they didn't have the legs. It was, to me, mental tiredness, because they're not picking the right option. They're running up blind alleys. They're choosing the wrong pass. They're miscontrolling the ball. There's a lot of what I think give the overall term, Martin, the sloppiness creeping in. And to me, it's not so much sloppiness, which indicates that if they just focused a bit more. To me, it's more this mental tiredness when you're not alert enough. Your brain isn't given the instructions that it was given quickly and clearly enough a few weeks ago. And I saw that so often last night. And you saw them getting frustrated with themselves and with each other as well, because they know this is not us, this is not the level we're at. And I think that's probably what annoys me the most, is that Rangers went out the cup last night, not the Rangers team that we've seen for the vast, every game this season, with the exception probably of winning Paisley.
Well, certainly at Ibrox, it's unrecognisable from so many of the performances we've seen. I think there's something in that. It's common in sport, common in football, where a team or an individual has a specific goal, a holy grail, and Christ knows we have built this league title up to be something like that. That when they achieve it, and have achieved it in jig time, that there's just a natural decline in that sharpness and that concentration and that drive, because it's all consuming, understandably. And once fans have calmed down, even the more reactionary voices last night, people understand that this has been our goal, because it's been a shared one, number one by miles. You see it, I don't know what other examples to use, international tournaments, when you get a shock team, and they get to maybe where they've always dreamed of getting, not winning it, because that's outside of their dreams, but they hit their level, whether that's the quarterfinals or semis or whatever, and they just can't. Emotionally, they don't have anything else, because they've reached it. Leicester even, whenever they won the championship, the immediate free fall, and that had to be arrested. So I think that's relatively understandable. Still should be enough to beat St Johnstone at home and go through and kind of do this. And maybe if the title was an actual race, still in the absolute guts of it just now, that has a different effect. I don't know. But after this summer, when 55 is put to bed, we've all bought the DVD. How many handsome faces might be on that? Who knows, David? But when that's all done and we start again, it really has to be what's next. And it has to be a Rangers side that don't see this league championship as being like Everest. They see it as being, that's ours. And maybe with that confidence and with that a different mindset, that's a real Rangers mindset, one would say, but understandable why it's been a struggle to get in there the last 10 years. You start to see the cups as being yours as well, and you start to see the season as a whole something that you plan for from start to finish, and it does encompass so many other things rather than that's just one all-consuming thing. And the mental energy and drive and hunger isn't spent by doing that one thing, if that makes any sense. That this just feels more comfortable. We should be there. We should be in a title race, and it should be ours. And I think that just hopefully gives a kind of wider perspective, and therefore it isn't a hassle and a real challenge to find the hunger for cups and find the hunger for even going that next stage in Europe and whatever else. It's just there's just a wider perspective on what's possible. But they're going to get passes, aren't they? Despite the frustration of the last 24 hours, and understandably so. But those passes expire at the end of May.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's who we are as Rangers supporters.
Yeah.
It's
that's why
great.
Rangers are what they are.
Yeah, because we do thank you so much for that. And you will be honoured for your achievements at Rangers forever. But when you're still there, it's great. What have you done for me lately? And that will be the case when we start off next season. As you say, the past doesn't extend into next year. Now, it's clearly, and I've been guilty of this as well, said, one final, not even one trophy, one final out of 6 attempts under Steven Gerrard. But a good point was made to me, which is that, well, true, but there were only 3 players who played in that Aberdeen semi-final, for example. So it's a completely different team. Is it fair to say that it's a mental thing or whatever, when it is a completely different team, that the only real signifying or unifying factor within that is the fact that it's a Steven Gerrard team and circumstances are different and whatnot? I don't know the answer to that. I'll be honest. It's a question that's kind of put me on the back foot, because initially I was, what's 1-6 in the story. And factually, that's true, Martyn. I mean, it is. It's 1 final and 6 no wins. But it is a completely different team. However, do things affect a club rather than a side? Can things get into the head, if you like, of a club rather than... I mean, that's why we see teams and they haven't won at this particular ground for 25 years, for example. Yeah. Clearly completely different teams, but does it become a thing in that regard in terms of a mental self-imposed hoodoo?
Possibly. I mean, we've had our issues with the Scottish Cup in our lifetime and a long time before that. And football's full of clubs that just have a problem with a particular competition. And you're right, bogey grounds and whatever else. It's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, I make myself look ridiculous, not for the first, not for the last time. In our live show in Kilwinning, David, October 18, so just early into the Steven Gerrard era. And I made that too neat, too convenient, too lazy assessment that I'm not overly convinced about his ability to win a championship, but I think he'll be a good cup manager because he was a good cup player, and he rose to that do or die situation, which is what cup football is. And we've been a bit sniffy about it. We've talked about it already, that, well, just the cups and all that. And if Rangers were chucking out the kids, like they have done in England for the League Cup for 20 years, and they're starting to do, or have not starting to do, been doing for some time in the FA Cup, that I don't really think that's the issue. I know we make big changes at Paisley, but we try to win the others. It's not as if we thought, well, that's beneath us. We're pretty much we're League and Europa League. That's the double we want. These domestic things don't matter. So I don't think we're quite in that place. But cup football, as much as we can be sniffy about it does test the ball. It is do or die. You don't get another shot. You might fall behind in a league race, and right, okay, you can make that up, and we know that's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's a different test of a team. It's a different test of a manager. Completely accept the personnel has changed, but I wouldn't completely rule out question marks still hanging over in terms of preparation and in terms of how the man management works there. It's just it's a weird old thing. The first couple of seasons, I thought they were some kind of reasonable indicator as to what might go wrong in the league once the calendar turned and you're into January and you can see that finishing line, and lo and behold, Rangers start dropping silly points. But we've come through all those clutch league games. We've shown so much character, so much nerve, so much game management. Look ridiculous now after praising the team so often this season for go back to Rugby Park at the start of November, just using that last 10 minutes and having the ball where it should be, which is in the opponent's half. Don't invite this nerve jangling pressure. But we're slipping back into those habits now and again, and it's a really weird one to get a handle on. I think we're too involved in it. We're too close to it at the moment. It's a question for historians in 10 years' time, I think, to get a real perspective on it. If you looked at this season as a whole, then those two nights, the one in Paisley and the one last night, are aberrations. We've not played anywhere close to being that bad. Any other time this season, I don't think, unless someone can pull out another performance for me.
Hamilton away, and
I'm always a garbage one, yeah. But
well, on that actually, there is I think something that links those three performances, which is you're absolutely right. There have been games that have been very tight this season. Hibs spring to mind. And games like that one you mentioned, Rugby Park, or recently Kilmarnock and St Johnstone at home, 1-0 up, desperately going for the title. And Rangers have seen those games out, all of them. And actually the game management in the last 10 minutes or so has been really impressive. Those three matches, what links them is that after not great performances, Rangers got a very late goal, a breakthrough goal. And then somehow, with the last kick of the ball, contrived, and it was a contrivance because it was so many mistakes. It wasn't an amazing bit of play by the opposition that Rangers somehow ended up losing two and drawing one and throwing away 2 points. But it's almost, therefore, I think worth asking: is it a case of that they just don't react quickly enough, that they relax and they go, thank God for that, and they don't reset? Whereas when they take the lead with 40 minutes played, they go, right, okay, the game's not done yet, so there's no switch off. Whereas it's almost like, and it did happen in the three games I've mentioned, it absolutely did, that the team just went, phew. We did, but we're fans, we're not in the park.
Yeah, it's thank God for that. And you're absolutely right. Those are that's the factor running through those games. Our big challenge this season, and one that we have passed with flying colours, is you get into a lead away from home at one of these grounds that you've kind of designated as being tricky. There's 25 minutes to go. You're still in the lead. How are you going to manage that? Because we have failed, and we have failed badly those last previous seasons. Rugby Park was the graveyard of our title ambitions. Tynecastle as well. I mean, we have to go through them all, but all from winning positions and then late goals. And in the league, I was so impressed with how we've managed that through this season, with 3 or 4 occasions where we've been in that position. Superbly done. Right, so we've got a new situation here, which is, can you just, once that adrenaline's disappeared, and can you manage that or the relief or whatever, can you stay switched on for another 5 minutes, please, and we'll win a treble. Once is understandable as bad luck. It's one of those things in sport. A few times, then you've struck on something, and if that's all we need to change next summer, the way that we changed our kind of half-hour game management for this season, then that's a good position to be in, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I will say about this Rangers team, that it has proven all this, current Rangers era, I suppose is a better word after I've mentioned that teams change around, is that while we as fans will say, well, they should have learned that lesson, they should have learned it immediately after St Mirren, it doesn't seem to work that way. They do seem to learn their lessons in the summer. That's when it's almost like they sit down and study what's happened. So hopefully it will be something that's dealt with. But there's a definite issue with that. A friend of mine who isn't a nutter and isn't prone to statements like, well, that's the worst I've ever seen, or the worst in the last 50 years, etc., etc. But he did say to me, genuinely, I think that's the worst Rangers goal I've ever seen us concede. And I said, nah. And he goes, okay, what was worse? And the only one I could come up with was Paolo Vanoli's own goal against Dunfermline. Because, when you pass the ball into your own net from 5 yards with nobody on you, that's bad. But a 6'8" man wearing a bright, luminous jersey, and who's quite a striking looking chap, he big hairy man, is standing in the middle of your 6-yard box and nobody marks him. That is a pretty bad goal to give away, yes.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do we see it happen and we kind of laugh it off? And here, listen, there was plenty of prophets of doom on group chats last night. I never felt troubled at all until that corner. I felt we'd get something, and of course we did. And as long as it didn't go to penalties. Once it went to penalties, no chance. But there was no one anywhere near him. And I don't know why. It was just one of those instinctive things because I think there's a problem here. And we've talked a lot, and we've waxed lyrical about the newfound defensive leadership that we've got in organisation, and obviously that really soft underbelly that Warburton and Coutinho gave us from set pieces seems to have really hopefully been dealt with this season. But then you get moments like that, you're like, well, who takes control? But I guess it goes back to what we're talking about there, David. It's resetting, see it out, get a few minutes. It shouldn't be there if we're being looking at it from a bigger view. That corner shouldn't happen. Again, it's this kind of game management. It's a wee bit the same on midweek at McDermott Park, of course. It's the use of the ball as a team to negate any freak weird bounces of the ball in the box, or indeed some tired disorganisation, as was the case. But yeah, he's not inconspicuous there. But who's in control? Who leads that? Whose responsibility is it? But I wouldn't disagree with your pal, to be honest. The number of failures, and not least Borna Barisic on the line. I don't think anyone comes out of that smelling nice.
No, and as you say, there was this feeling immediately when it went to penalties that deep down in my heart I didn't believe, but I got the impression the players didn't. And Tav, who, to be fair, is his first full game back. He's played 120 minutes bravely, in terms of I'm the captain, I'll go up and hit it. But my God, I mean, there was nothing in his legs at that point. And we were off to the bad start. And I think it all compounded itself from there. I think that it all looked as though it was going the way that it did eventually go. It is a tough one to take for us because you mentioned at the start it's not going to wash away the adulation that this team has earned this season and deserves, and nor should it. And anyone who is sitting, fuming today and saying that it does, well, okay, don't come out on the 15th then. If it really ruined it for you that much, then okay, leave the rest of us to it. I don't believe anyone is like that. As you say, once the reactionary, just immediate upset goes, I think that people do appreciate what this title has meant. I've said before, I think it's the biggest one in my lifetime, and I stand by that. But we do still need to say, right, okay, why can't you get over the line? Because you had done the hard yards this year. You had beaten Celtic, right? And it's not a great Celtic team. You're miles better than them. I don't think anyone would disagree. But then the only team I felt that could stop Rangers winning the Scottish Cup after last week was us. And I think we proved that last night. We were flat, we were a wee bit unlucky, but we did miss some glorious chances that would have, got us through. And maybe that was the difference, because in games previously this season, we haven't missed those chances. We've taken one of them. And then we've, I firmly believe that if Alfie's header goes in, we don't lose a last minute goal.
No.
I think we would have seen it through, but the circumstances, a slight weakness that we've proven that we've had before, and it all collapses in itself. Where I'm regretful and sad probably is that this season now probably will peter out, because yes, it's an Old Firm game coming up, and yes, we'll all go, what's an Old Firm game? These always matter, and I don't want to lose my membership to the Uber Staunch Club, but some matter more than others. And this one isn't, shall we say, one that's going to define a generation. Then you've got Livingston away. Not the most appealing prospect, let's be honest. And then you've got title day where, and there's a game on. So it's a shame to me. I feel sad for the players. I mean, I know it's kind of on them why it's happened, but it is going to peter out. And I did want them to do well in the cup for me because I'm selfish, but also to give them that moment, that day, that visual that probably now they won't get.
Yeah, obviously. The petering out thing, well, if we're knocked out early and won the league at the same time, that's petering out. That's looking at the whole of April and May, thinking what is this unbeaten thing? That's a bit more daunting than 3 games. Now this Old Firm game isn't going to be one for the ages because there's not a lot riding on it other than the kind of unbeaten. I was on extra last week. I still think if we can find again another boost in terms of energy and drive, whatever, I think they're there for the taking in a big way, and it would be good, very good, in fact, to kind of round this season of all league seasons off with an absolute pounding. I think they're right for that, personally. Whether we can find that energy, of course, for reasons we've discussed, is maybe something else. Livy would be the one. Livy is always the one that I don't think anyone particularly looks forward to. And the Aberdeen game, I mean, I've seen Rangers teams play Aberdeen the last day of the season to lift the trophy and forget there's a game on, and 3-0 did we lose at Ibrox once? There is a bit of the Lord Mayor show about that, but it's still an occasion, and they do want it to go in that rostrum in this weird set of circumstances, off the back of a win, off the back of an undefeated league season, which is still remarkable. It's something you and I have not seen a Rangers team do. And all of this conversation that we're having just now, David, is the responsibility of the management to see what they can eke out for another 3 games. You can always paint something in a different light. You can always add at least some kind of rider, some kind of impetus to a contest. That's kind of the job of management, I would have thought.
Is there a slight concern? I was concerned going into the game. Scott Arfield had suffered an injury in training. With Ryan Jack out and Bongani Zungu suspended, it meant that we literally had no midfield options on the bench. We had 5 forwards, which is great, but it does point to a squad imbalance.
It does, and it's the same squad imbalance that we were talking about last summer. Every fan wants, a new striker, always. I don't think we were overly concerned about centre half, but we did well, obviously, with the Balogun option, which has been very, very useful. But we were all concerned about a midfield. Jack's injury issues have been a problem. Arfield's injury issues were well known. I don't think he ever stays fit long enough. And so that's an energy problem. We've been saved by 2 things, I guess. Glenn Kamara's had a level of consistency that I wasn't sure he had. He obviously shown glimpses of that kind of midfield work and that kind of midfield role, but his consistency this year's been outstanding. And Steve Davis has had an Indian summer. None of us were predicting that last summer. Could he have a role to play? Of course. Hugely experienced, hugely intelligent, gifted, classy footballer. But the games he's played, the role he's played within those games has been incredible. It's been brilliant. I don't know if we can rely on that again next summer. So it's still the big issue for us to get right. I'm not saying we got away with one because of Davis and Kamara really, really stepping up to the plate. But I'd be concerned if we were speaking again this time next summer, the end of this close season, and all we've got is a kind of unknown talent that we've kind of got to have a look at, a try before you buy kind of thing. I think we badly need some recognisable, dependable quality in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that last summer it was the priority. We didn't really address it, but because of the players that we've had, I think Glenn Kamara's been superb this season as well. Another level, really, from what he'd been previously. That we have not got away with it. That's not fair. These guys are there. They're being paid good money. They're there for a reason. Scott Arfield's form in the early part of the season was absolutely terrific as well. So I do believe that we, it's not fluke, it's not fortune, but we could have been in a bit more trouble than we've been, and we definitely will be next season if we don't address it. So for me, I'm with you on that one. That is the key area that I think we need to deal with. I look around the rest of the squad and I'm quite satisfied with it. Maybe even need some pruning in certain areas, but in midfield I do look at that and I say we could actually do with not only one or two real quality upgrades, but also even a supporting cast coming in that can provide something in there. Maybe even look at, some of our youngsters. Stephen Kelly has been impressing this season, and can he come in and start to feature? But I mean, it would at least have been handy to have him on the bench last night, for example. Because we literally did have 5 forwards. On that, then, a couple of individuals I just want to talk to you about. I've seen an awful lot of chatter about on social media, on our website, heartandhand.com, folks, for those of you who, it's patreon.com even, /heartandhand. And a lot of discussion about 2 players in particular. One is Jack Simpson. Now, it's obviously unfair, even of me, to bring this up because he has barely played, and we know that. But you only get one chance to make a first impression. And certainly from what I'm reading, jury out would be the fairest term. He will have to put together, I would say, a good run of form, whether it be in the next few games if Philip Helander suffered an injury, or whether it be at the start of next season. I think because Rangers fans, once they make their mind up, fairly or not, by the way, for anyone who's saying, how can you say that, David? You're absolutely right. He's barely played. But fairly or not, once Rangers fans make their mind up, it's hell of a difficult to shift it.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. Some players are just heroes the minute they turn up, and fans won't hear a bar of anything else. Yeah, an awkward start. Certainly, there are questions there, but how many games of football has he played in 2 years at a competitive level? I'm not sure we're into double figures.
I think he's got some like 25 career games before he arrived. Yeah.
And I mentioned this to Cammy on Extra last week that, listen, our window, 2 windows this year have been really good. The best I think we've had, in areas of the pitch, some areas of the pitch, not all, we've got options rather than backups, and that's been so important, especially forward thinking, David. All of these guys have just had their purple patch. Haji and Aribo have turned it up for spells. Roof carried us through December. We didn't really see Alfie really until Pataudry in January, and then he kind of propelled on. So that's been great. But we've had a core though still of maybe 14, 15 that the managers depended on and really believed in. And we've had our injury issues and COVID issues like everyone else, but it's not been. I don't think we've ever used the word injury crisis at Ibrox, which is a blessed relief, to be honest, because
we grew up with that
consciousness of Rangers. That's never been too far away.
We grew up with one that lasted 25 years.
Yeah, exactly. I did say I wasn't going to be super scorable, so we'll not get into why that might have been. But it's meant that as great as this trust is in this kind of core of 15, those outside of that, how are they supposed to just, whenever they're called upon after 6 or 7 games of doing nothing, supposed to just kind of walk in and look the part? That if you do have a squad that you're hoping to rely on, then that squad rotation, that management probably needs to be a wee bit more. And these guys are seeing game time. But again, it goes back to the crux of this whole discussion, David. Are you going to risk 55 at any point through messing around? It's such a fine balance to strike between being the Tinkerman, as Ranieri was, or running your core group into the ground, and the peripheral players having no touch, no confidence, no feel, no relationship, no chemistry with any of their teammates when they are actually asked to do it. So it's not a huge surprise. I know it's an interesting one. Where does he break in? Maybe a barnstorming performance on Sunday would start.
Wouldn't hurt. The other one is Kemar Roofe. Now, Kemar Roofe had a very bad night last night. There's no doubt about that, from not running the ball into a corner. I thought he was fouled, to be honest, but even so, bad decision making, and then missing his penalty, which is unfortunate. But I think when you take a penalty in a certain way, you might leave yourself more open to criticism than certain other ways. And he, of course, had tried to score from the halfway line the other night, and St Johnstone then going on attack for that, and coming so close to get people notice. He's had a strange season, Kemar Roofe. Some absolutely superb performances, brilliant spell, probably sort of November, December, where he was absolutely terrific. A lot of time injured, which I think everybody had to know about when he arrived. And I think that there is a legitimate wondering among the Rangers support as to whether or not it's a case of maybe shaking him by the hand and thanking him for his contribution to 55 in the summer and getting our money back, or persevering with a guy who clearly is talented, but can we rely on him? And again, I realise I'm being harsh there, but these are the discussions you've got to make when you've got a limited budget.
It's a fair discussion. I don't think anyone should be surprised that the Kemar Roofe season, we've seen that as Kemar Roofe, that's what you're getting. You will have, let's say, October to December, he was a diamond, an absolute diamond. The ability and intelligence to do things that no other player was doing. The 2 goals in Europe being sensational, of course, but some of the dirtier work just to kind of grind through December. So you'll get a lot of that, or you'll get some of that. You'll absolutely get some time in the season where you'll not see him because he's injured. That's the deal. And sometimes where he's just off it. That's been his career. So I don't know what anyone was really expecting otherwise. Is it too harsh to say he's been an expensive cameo? Maybe. I don't mean it harshly.
Was he
the best of him for a quarter of the season?
Was he a qualified risk in that regard? From
yes, because without that quarter of
the
season, I don't really want to think about where we would be, possibly in a real title race that kind of goes to the wire, and then you're talking about do or die games. I'd rather not test that at this minute. So he's been worth the signing this season. But I take your point. There's a conversation there. It's a conversation that ultimately Ross Wilson and Steven Gerrard have and take, obviously, about whether you can have that over a 3-4 year deal or whatever. But I don't know why people are getting hot and bothered about it. That's Kemar Roofe. That it'd be great to have him the October December for the whole season. If we did, we would genuinely have a £20 million striker on our hands.
No, I think you're right.
That's just not possible. So this season, the qualified risk has been proven to be a good one, because his shift, and I think all the attackers, Davey, have had these wee purple patches. I don't think any of them have been consistent from top to bottom of the season, and that was his. At a traditionally awkward time of the year, at home and abroad, and no, I still think he gets a pass, because that's what you were getting.
Well then, that's that'll do us for discussion. Rather painful, but yeah, we'll get over it. We'll refocus. We've got an Old Firm game at the weekend, and we do have a rather large party to look forward to in a few weeks, which I know for one I'm going to enjoy. I'm sure you will as well, Martyn. We've got a rather pleasurable announcement to make, and that is that today, thanks to the largesse of the Heart and Hand community, we were able to donate £3,017 to the Rangers Youth Development / Rangers Benevolent Experts Benevolent Fund. corporation. So I'm absolutely delighted by that. £3,017. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, all of our patrons who got involved in that. We really appreciate it, and we'll be doing more. Hopefully we'll be able to get out and do things like live shows and whatnot, and we'll be continuing to make donations to that. But I was really proud of everyone in the Heart and Hand family for allowing us to do that. Right, my thanks to our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and my thanks to the ever wonderful Martyn Ramsey.
Pleasure's all mine, David, even on weeks like this.
Cammy will be back later in the week, folks, with Heart and Hand Extra, when he will preview the match against Celtic. I'll be back here next Monday. If we win, Martyn, I'll get you back on, because you're right, you do always get the defeats. So, and if we lose, Martyn, I'll get you back on, because you're right, you do always get the defeats. So thank you to everyone for joining us, and we'll be back soon. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.